Greetings, folks. My name's Griffin, and, in these isolated times, I figure it wouldn't hurt for those of you who have enjoyed the various paint and sip experiences. Should you happen to have a canvas that you've gone out to one of those events before in the past and it didn't come out the way you wanted, and you have enough white paint to just paint over it, then do that. If you happen to have some canvases around, also acceptable. A lot of art supply stores are still open and will sell you the 5 basic colors of paint. And I will list those on the screen now. But I'm just going to give you a quick step-by-step version from one of the paintings I used to teach at one of those companies. And hopefully it'll give you something to do while you're trapped indoors. Now, first thing that we're going to do is we are going to just take the bright yellow and we are going to slowly smear this on as much of the canvas as possible to give you a nice solid base. Now, you'll notice that I kind of just slap it around at any angle. I think part of me, with my background as an oil painter primarily, when I was working on canvas, now I do watercolor and ink mostly, but I used to do this to try to give the painting more texture by not trying to follow any sort of pattern. I don't think it works as well with acrylic, but it's a hard habit to beat. The important thing is that, see how I've boxed out the middle there? You're going to want that whole area filled in with yellow. You don't have to go all the way to the edge. Just get that nice central panel completely packed with all that lovely pigment. And, as we do that, it'll start to dry and you'll start to see patches where the yellow didn't quite cover the canvas or, where you may need another layer. Feel comfortable to just go back. This is also a nice way to just warm up and get used to moving a brush around on canvas again if you haven't had practice in a while. It is just a nice way to start without any specific goal, no pressure of screwing it up. Really, the only way that you can make a mess of this is if you mix it with another color somehow by accident. And even if you do that, not the end of the world. Acrylic is very forgiving, and as you let it dry, you can go right over the top again, and it holds up pretty well. But yeah, we're just gonna, fill in any splotches or blank spots where a little bit of canvas is showing through. Make sure those edges are pretty well boxed up. Not that that will matter in the long run, but I want a nice frame for when I bring in the color from the edge in so it transitions better. Just good way to kind of zen your way into the start of the process. Now, I'm probably working faster than most of you will, and that's to be expected given that this is what I did for years. So feel free to pause the video at any point if you need more time to do the activity that I've already outlined. But as you can see, the next step is that I am adding a little bit of blue. I say a little bit. I am going to coat the outer edge with blue the same way that I've coated the inner edge or the center area with yellow. And I'm going to blend the edges so that there's this nice little green halo where they touch. So don't be afraid of letting the contact happen. But yeah, same way as you did with the yellow, except now you're using the blue. No other color mixed in at the time. You're going to just go around the edges, hit the corners. I wouldn't worry about doing the tops, bottom, and side edges of the canvas at this point. If you are the type who does like to paint the outside edges, right now just make sure you get the mix. If you need to add a little bit of yellow in because the central yellow has dried, see how I just put a splash of yellow in there just to give it a little bit of texture, add a little bit more of that transition. That is entirely acceptable. But yeah, you are just going to gently go around, cover up any spots again. Just keep your eyes peeled for anywhere where the canvas is poking through. Give yourself a nice solid border. The goal for the first phase, as I'm sure any of you remember who have done this before, is just to get every inch of the canvas covered with some amount of acrylic paint. Now, I will note that some of the people who teach these events will encourage folks to, dilute your paint with a little bit of water in order to loosen the paint up and make it spread easier on the bare canvas. I do not recommend that. The reason why, granted, most folks who are doing this aren't trying to make a masterpiece that'll last for generations, but The water is not fully compatible with acrylic. It's not a water-soluble paint, or it's not intended to be water-soluble, so it doesn't really mix with the water so much as the water gets in the way of the pigment. And what you will find is, if you blend your paint with water on this base coat, over the years, over time, actually, if you need to, flip the canvas around to do a better job of hitting the other edge, feel free to rotate the whole thing. But mixing the paints with water, you will find that over time the paint will flake off, and that tends to be distressing for future you. For present you, it won't really matter, but for future you, it will be a bit of a drag. But for now, just power through it. The paint is probably going to be a little tacky if you got a cheaper brand, which is it'll still do the job. It'll just be a little bit more of a slog at the beginning when you're trying to smear it around the canvas without much help. The blue more so than the yellow, because the pigment mixture for that one is just a little tackier, I found. And most brands, at least. I'm sure there's some brands where that's not the case, but usually seems to be an issue where the tackiness is just feels gummy. But go through, get everything covered. You'll see like little areas where the brush strokes are a little bit too obvious, or you don't like how something shows, or you need a little bit more yellow to get that blend going. Just now you're going to go around and touch up anything that you want to fine tune. Now, I don't suggest trying to make it perfectly smooth. You'll see that I am leaving a lot of brush strokes and visibility of kind of splashes of color in where the crossovers happen. But, to each their own. I feel like these textures give it a little bit of life and personality, whereas, if you're going to smooth out everything perfectly, then that's not really, it's not going to feel like a painting at the end of the day. I think my teacher actually used to call it having a painterly approach to painting, which always sounded vaguely condescending and redundant, but, looking back, it is the correct description, where if you're trying to make the paint strokes visible, that is probably what a painter wants. But I'm just going to pick up little bits of blue, little bits of yellow, and just kind of like keep patting that edge to give this nice green transition. Some of it harsh, some of it light. But we're going to get a nice blend of things here. And I probably should have opened. Nah, you know what? I don't need to bring that up. I was just going to mention that if you want to see the end result, you can always fast forward to the end. I'll probably have a thumbnail that shows what the end result is, though, so I don't know why. I don't know why I worry about such things. It's been a while since I've recorded a video, so my brain is still jumping around between, just saying what needs to be said versus my brain trying to remind me of things that I'm supposed to say. Hopefully your isolation is going better than mine with my noisy mind. But this is a good way to try to quiet yourself, make yourself feel productive in a time when maybe you aren't being as productive as you'd like because you're disallowed from the idea. But yeah, now I'm just trying to let the middle area dry and adding some personality to the very outer edge. The blue is mostly dried on the outside. The yellow is literally just being added as like little pops and streaks to create just a little bit more of that sort of depth of field. Like if you kind of stand back and look at it, it looks almost like the yellow is further away, or it's supposed to be. And now we're going to grab a little bit of white paint and just come right dead center and really brighten up that center spot. So just add a little bit more of that sense of depth to it. And I'm just dabbing it in right now, trying to get some paint in the middle. And then after I get this established, I may do a little bit of swirling. I'm not sure. The dabbing actually is giving it a nice effect that I might leave there. But if you want to swirl it the same way we've been swirling the blues and yellows, just like this, just kind of mix it around. This also works. I think it would have been fine if I had just left it to dabbing, though. That should have still given it a nice vibe. But now I've committed to this, so this is what's happening. And the important thing is that you don't argue with yourself on the canvas. Once you start doing a thing, you kind of need to, like, dive into that. Trying to undo stuff or go back doesn't really work. You could let the whole thing dry and, like, reapproach that section, but, you know, for that you'd have to pretty much stop dead and, you know, wait for it to dry and then go back an entire step in this process, fix it, and then come back later, which, luckily, because you're watching this on YouTube, you can pause this video and go back to whatever step you want. That is one of the great benefits. I'm going to also bring a little of these highlights really softly to the outer edges of this swirl, just to, again, trying to give it that sense of range. And obviously this is all just going to be overshadowed by our central figures soon, but for the time being, actually, I'm going to switch brushes. The chisel tip, it has a little bit more of a flat... I can do different things with this, and you'll see. I'm going to... I've mixed some green, and now we're going to start bringing those central figures in. I think it's about that time. Just going to take that flat edge and just really, like, drag little sharp-pointed lines through. And it can totally get wider as you go down. And just, you know, bring everything towards a central stem that you're imagining at the moment. Then I'm going to come back up, kind of fill in that bottom. Going to get a little bit higher with this. Now, and I'm going to add another leaf. Maybe two. Let's bring this one up too. All right, now I'm going to come up a little higher and really just, we're just going to pull in this little bottom of a bud with a little 5-point drag. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just locking in some key aspects. I'm going to put another one right over here. This one's a lot messier, but, you know. Now we're just going to drag the stem straight down from those into the center of that pod of little leaves. I'm going to give this one a little offshoot because I kind of like thickened it up, so there we go. That looks better. As Bob Ross would say, you make a little mistake and it can be a happy mistake with a little bit of attention. I don't know if that's specifically, I'm paraphrasing. Badly, I might add. But we're just going to bring together all these little leaves. Now I'm going to do another one over here. It's going to cross the other leaves, and that's fine. Come up way high. Just bring this right down. Take your time. Let the edge do most of the work. You're just going to let your arm drag down in that direction. You don't want to get caught up trying to, like, fine detail these things. If you try to make every single leaf perfect, you're going to waste a lot of time doing stuff that people aren't going to notice. Right now, we have some nice shapes, and we're just going to keep adding to it. I'm going to bring in a little bit more of one in the corner over here. I think this one might be a smaller one. Not really certain yet. I think I'm going to go with something smaller. Maybe have it come up like less leaves, but I still want it to overshadow. I want all the ones on the outer edge to kind of like fold in towards that central light. But the point is to make everything pointing towards the middle at the end of all this. You want everything to slightly curve towards that central white spot. But yeah, don't worry about perfecting any of these lines, cleaning up these edges. You're just going to find the ends of stems that you like, pop in a few of these little base buds. I don't know what to call them. They're like the little flourishes that, you know, when the bud of the flower opens, this is like the little green bit that hangs out underneath them. It's really, there's different ways to do it. Sometimes on drag. I'm just going to flick my wrist, see if I can get some nice rotations that way. But all of this is going to kind of get overshadowed once we put the nice bright red flowers in. So I would not worry too much about perfecting it. Now let's go in. I'm going to create a brighter yellow with a little bit of this white and yellow mixture. And I'm back to using the big 1-inch flat brush that we used to coat everything. Now I'm just going to give it a big pull right towards the head of that pod. kind of in the little, gonna arc it, like basically I'm fanning it out. I'm doing like 3 little brush strokes that just drag towards that middle. Here, I'm gonna do I'm gonna use the edge and kind of like curve in towards. So instead of getting that flat fan, I'm making sort of like an eye shape, a bulb. This one's gonna be closed, essentially. This one, we're gonna do another pod. Don't worry about painting over the other flowers. We kind of want that to get the 3-dimension. Actually, you know what? Let's make this one full facing. I'm going to, we're going to pull it in on all sides and then do a little bit, just a little bit. All right. Now over here, round that out. Do the same thing. Keep it wide open. Another bud on this one. So we got 2 buds and 3 open flowers, and this should give us a nice amount of floral content. Now, clean your brush off. Make sure you always completely wash your brush when you're done. I'm going to go back in with a little bit of yellow on some of these leaves and stems using the little yellow that we have left over and the chisel brush again. And just kind of like lighten that up, give it a little bit of depth by coming in on the outer edge of some of them. So it looks like the light from the middle is sort of highlighting some of it. Just gives that extra sense of 3-dimensionality, depth, whatever you want to call it. Highlights and shadows, you know how it all goes. Now, bright red. Let's just dive right in. We'll start with the bud because they're easier to fix. But you're just going to reload the brush for every petal and just slowly drag up each of these little buds. I'm going to leave it a little open at the top and just let that be. Now you'll see I picked up a little bit of the yellow, and that's okay. It'll let us give some nice definition. I'm going to come in on the top and add these little dabs of red on the outer edge, so it looks like the edge of the petal is showing, and then we're going to take that logic straight to this open one. Just going to hit the outer edge right there, do a nice little flat, and then dab the corners to give it a little bit of life. This one I'm going to have folded inside a little bit, same with this one. And it's just a matter of like finding the right angles. And you can always switch to a smaller brush if you don't feel like you have the control. I just feel like getting that one dab in along the top is easier to do with the big brush. But if you want to do the edges and corners a little bit with the chisel or something, entirely acceptable. Now we're just going to drop to the front and have this part of the flower facing us. So it's like, we can see the outer edge of the front petals, and then we're seeing the inside on the other side. And we're going to reload and go back up top. I do always tend to work from, it's like writing or reading, top left to bottom right, at least in English-speaking countries, or reading countries, you know what I mean. But because we've all been trained to like lean with our hands slightly, this moving from right to left means that it's more likely the paint below my hand right now is going to be dry if I keep moving from up to down, left to right. But yeah, just go through, use the same basic techniques. You can we'll start on the outside on this one, just so you can see that you don't have to start with the inside flowers, or inside petals. Actually, you know what? I might actually just box this one up so it is much more, we'll just have a little bit of it showing. Not much at all. Very light touch. There we go. And then one last little bud. Once I clean up. Yep. Let's clean this up a little bit more. Make sure that base is nice and solid. Then, here we go. We'll get this last bud. I'm just going to hit these points real quick, and then we can just fill in the rest pretty easily. Just like a little bit of an open sense to it where it's starting to open, but, give it a nice variation of shape. And there we have it. Nice 5 flowers. And if you want, you always have the option of like mixing a little of the green and blue together to get a darker blue. Just like take a dab of the green and a little bit more of the blue and darken that up, and then go back in on some of the leaves and petals. Not the petals, I'm sorry, the leaves and stems, to give that a little bit more of a shadow if you want. Make those a little bit darker so that they don't feel as ethereal. You can always choose to go in with a little bit of a blue and red mix and try to, edge out some shadow on the petals. But for the most part, this is just a nice way to wrap things up. For now, I am just going to sign right down here with my messy little signature. And there we have it. Hopefully that keeps you busy while you're indoors. I'm going to post another one of these soon. I don't know if I'll be doing more after that. I just happen to have enough supplies to pull these off, and I'm sure I could pick up some extra if people seem into it. But for now, I hope this is helpful, keeping you a little bit busy. Feel free to do the YouTube things if you're into that. Everyone knows what the YouTube things are. I'm not going to do the stuff. You can also check out griffins.com, GRIFFINESS.com, for more nonsense from me. But, yeah. Take good care of yourself. Stay thoughtful. Stay playful. Stay creative.